Hello, everyone, and welcome to Project Likkutei Torah. We are learning Daf Chaf Zayin of Sefer Bimidbar, Parsha Naso, and the fourth piece of the mimer about Birchas Kohanim and benching. And so we speak about this idea that Mimer explains the difference between eating in order to be satiated, not eating in order to be satiated in spiritual terms. That's the idea of kedei says in the pasuk specifically v'lechem levav enosh yisod, specifically through the seuda of sevia. That's when we have this special mile that we're about to explain. That the lechem, the bread, has within it, might say piyavaya, has a spark of Hashem. And so what happens is that spark, godly spark, goes into the nefesh of the person and gets included in kedusha, and then the soul of the person gets elevated to such a high level that the Rabbi describes as gilui ein sof barachel. And then that is able to become revealed in chachma. And with this whole abundance of kedusha. But if a person eats less than kedei sevia, and therefore they're not chayav to bench, therefore spiritually you have less chayas of kedusha. There's less from the ma'aseh piyavai that's of the spark within the bread, so it's much more diminished, and therefore this the soul is able to become only refined from noga and not get elevated all the way to this gilui or in sof level. So now, despite all this chiluk between kedei sevia and not kedei sevia in eating, nevertheless, in Birchas Kohanim, we have this process. Nevertheless, that the bracha of Hashem, of Yisrael, Havaya, Panav, is the idea of lifting elevation above. And specifically, the idea that panim is the idea of revelation, as opposed to achar at the back side of a person, which would be concealment. Just like Cahnman basar kaspoi, that someone who, like a king who throws food over his shoulder, that's sustaining in a matter of acharayim. But by Birchas Kohanim, we have this elevation and sustenance and revelation in a more direct way. That meaning to say that one, through this Birchas Kohanim, one is elevated higher than Sedushalshus, which is this level of Hag Magbi Lashaves Mashbiler Bashmaim Varetz. That we say that Hashem is Magbila Shabbos, that is, he's very elevated and lofty, but nevertheless, he's able to see down on heaven and earth. So the idea is that Hashem's so elevated and lofty that he's able to have this influence on Shemaim V'aretz. Shemaim meaning Ruchnias, and Aretz meaning Gashmias. That both Ruchnias and Gashmias are considered equal before Hashem. I mean, they're both mashpili. They're both considered equal. In this elevation that we have in Birchas Kohanim, there's Yisa Havaya Panav Eilicha, specifically that this gilui and hamshacha, an elevation of Hashem and of the neshama should come specifically to you, meaning that to the individual neshama gets this gilui hamshacha. But this is a hamshacha that's higher than sedushalshus, which is this same hamshacha that we were able to accomplish through eating kedei sevia, which is this inyan of Yisa Havaya. Through this, we're able to gather every single spark sparks of holiness that's scattered in even the furthest corners. Even though if they have the smallest amount of kedusha in them, they're still able to be collected and elevated, so and included in holiness, which is the source of within Hashem, the source of life, and have that be influenced in the Tachtonim. So therefore, we see here this proof from Birchas Kainim that seemingly even if it's less than Kedei Sevilla, if someone eats less than the amount of being satiated, still there seemingly should be this level of Yisa via Panav Elacha that even the most scattered small sparks of less than Kedei Sevilla should be able to be one united with this highest level of holiness. Now we have this question: how can this hamshacha occur from such a lofty level that's higher than the state of histalshelos come all the way down? It's specifically through the continuation of the pasuk in Birchas Kainim, v'yasim l'cha shalom. That's specifically through this idea of shalom, which is peace, the idea of uniting and connecting two opposites. As we say in Eoiv, Oisa Shalom B'Mreimav, that Hashem, who makes peace on high, what does Hashem make peace on high with? Is with the angels of Michael, the minister of water, and Gabriel, the minister of fire, etc. Meaning that through their bittul to this level that is higher than both of them, specifically when you tap into a level that's higher than both Michael and Gabriel, you're able to reach this level and unite the two. And that's why Hashem is the one that's Oisa Shalom B'Mreimav. And that's why Yasim L'cha Shalom is able to cause this hashpa of holiness into the neshamas. This all explains where sages say that the Talmidei Chachamim increase shalom into the world. It says in Yeshaya, "V'chol banaych limudei havaya, Rav Shleim Banoich," meaning through the learning of Torah, which is Hashem's chachma, we're able to tap into a level that's higher than disagreement and separation and not the opposite, anything that's the opposite of coexistence, and allow for the coexistence. And specifically, in the pasuk in Yeshaya, it's a limudei havaya in the brackets explains that limudei is lashon nifal, meaning that the learning of halacha, when a person learns halacha with a bittul that it's dvar havaya, therefore they receive the limud every time directly from Hashem, and I consider as if Hashem himself teaches the student, as it says in the pasuk in Yavaya Melamedcha. And this dvar havaya is literally halacha. That is when you learn halacha, you're literally learning dvar Hashem, that the Hashem is literally speaking to you. And when a person learns the Mishnah, and same idea by Mishnah, that it says in the Mag Mishnah that the mechaber of the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef, he spoke as if in one of his famous farm, that the Mishnah, it's as if the Mishnah is speaking directly to him, as it is written in Yeshaya, that Hashem is literally speaking to us when we learn halacha. And through this, we're able to increase peace in the world. Rav Shalom Chule. This level of briachatichoin, this intermediate bar, supporting bar that extends through every column, so to speak, of that make up the outer wall of the Mishkan. It would go through all those bars and mavriach min hakatza lakatza, as is written in Shmuel Aleph. It says ki kel deis havaya, that God is all knowing, but the expression of God being all knowing in Lashon HaKodesh in this pasuk, it says deis in the plural. So what does that mean? It means that Hashem has two deis. There's two knowledges. There's two that just like We have milmailu lamata, from above to below, kulei kamei kulei chashiv, that from Hashem's perspective, all of this world is complete nothingness. So too, from below to above, we have this similar. We have this similar union of das tachtein as opposed to das alyoin. That recognizing that Hashem is complete nothingness from our perspective, because he's completely beyond everything. So from both perspectives, from das alien and das tachtein, from the perspective, the initial perspective, the other perspective seems like nothing. And meaning that through learning Torah, this level of bittul, well, it says in the pasuk, "V'lei sachalalu," that we won't be profane Hashem in Parsha Zamor. V'lei sachalalu Shem Kuchi, as it is explained in another place. And this is the whole union of our sages. Sages say that kol ha'isik b'Torah, Isa shalom b'pamali shalmaila b'pamali shalmata. Anyone who learns Torah makes peace in the supernal heavens and the terrestrial heavens. I guess that would be the way I would translate it. Meaning to say that through this level of Yichudillah and Yichudei Torah, that through learning Torah, we're able to affect these unities, this higher level of unity, Yichudillah, and lower level of unity, Yichudei Torah, which is obviously connected tangentially to Dasal and Tachtein. And this is when it says V'rav Shalom Banaich, specifically with the word Rav. Rav means abundance of peace will be for your children, specifically Marbim Shalom, with this abundance in this Pamalia, supernal Pamalia and this terrestrial Pamalia, that through the Talmidei Chachamim, through these Torah scholars, they receive from Chachma, from this level of Koyachma, this power of Hashem, which is in the level of Malchus Bittul, and the Miloi of Shem Havaya 45. This is what it means, V'yasem l'cha shalom, that make for you, that Hashem will make peace for you. Meaning to say that he gives to you this level of shalom, that Hashem gives this level of shalom, that the Talmidei Chachamim and Marbim Shalom Ba'ilam, that they create the shalom specifically in the world. How? Through Dvar Havai, through learning halacha, and specifically learning Mishnah, Deberes, etc., as we quoted earlier. And so sages say that Kli Hamachzik Bracha Yisrael, Hu HaShalom, what's the vessel to bring bracha for the Jewish people, specifically through peace, Shalom. At this level, Shalom is this vessel, this Kli, that can receive this supernal bracha, which is this level of Yisavai Panav, which is higher than Siddush. And therefore, our sages have this ability to necessitate making the bracha berachas hamazon even when a person eats less than the sheer sevia minatara, meaning to say that l'chayra, you might need to eat more than a kazais of bread to feel full. Most people do. Most people need to eat several kazaisim of bread to feel full. Nevertheless, because we have this level of Yisa Havaya Panav, that Shem Yekevavke is elevated and reveals himself down to us in this lowest levels, from above, from myashtlshlos, and is able to tap down through that, being Yisavai Panav in the highest spiritual levels, able to penetrate the lowest levels, that even eating less than a sheer kazai sevia, like just even a simple kazais of bread, would obligate a person to bench even minatara. And this is V'sam Shmiya B'nei Yisrael. And this is what it means that in the continuation of the Parsha of Berachos Kainim, that my name will be placed on the Jewish people. What does this mean? That Hashem's name is called upon when there's asik in the Torah, meaning when the Yidden are learning and toiling in Torah and Avodah, they'll have this level of Likkutei Torah, that specifically when the Torah learning is in a manner of Likkutei Torah, learning Hashem, meaning the learning of Hashem, meaning to say learning in a way that one is able to internalize the fact that Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, is speaking to you literally. Then we'll get this bracha of Ani Avarchem. That what does Ani mean? Ani has the same letters as Ayin, Aleph, Yud, Nun. Aleph, Nun, Yud, Aleph, Yud, Nun. Ayin. Ayin means nothingness, meaning that the Chachma, I have another pasuk in Eov that says Chachma me'ayin timatze. Specifically, you can tap into Hashem's Chachma, which is very lofty part of Hashem, specifically through this level of bittul. It comes from bittul, because Chachma is connected to bittul, this level of ayin, of nothingness, meaning that from the level of Yisa via Panav, we'll have this bracha from above to below, this additional and multitudinous hashpa and bracha from above, vishalshlos. This is the whole concept of bracha bereish, bracha b'seif. That one merits, that one should have a bracha, say the bracha in the beginning and bracha at the end. Bracha bereish represents yivarechacha, the beginning of Berachos Kainim, which represents the bracha of Havaya from above to below. And bracha b'seif, as quoted in the Zohar, alludes to the very end of Berachos Kainim, where it says Niavarachem. That specifically, that is the bracha mil maila lamata. Sorry, yeah. So the first bracha of Berachos Kainim is a bracha from below to above. And the bracha at the end, when we do when we get the bracha from Imam to Lamaila, then we merit the Vaniya Varchem that Hashem blesses Jewish people from above to below. And that is the end of the mimer. And now we're going to move on to the beer, which begins on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. So now in the beer, we ask a very fascinating question. In Bereshis, it brings in the pasuk that Adam Rishon gave each of the creatures different names. Veikra ha'adam shemais. Now the chayra doesn't make any sense because it's brought down in Sefer Shabbeinu Chelek Beis that the name of something is the chayas that's enlivening the thing. And we know that through the combination of the different letters of the name. And if that's the case, wait a minute, all these other creatures from earth, Daimim, Samech, and Chai, these are all these animals and plants and everything were all created before Adam Rishon was created. So even the fly, as brought down in Gemara, even the small little gnat, the smallest fly, was created before Adam Rishon. So how can it be that Adam Rishon gave them all these animals the names? Now, so the inyan is that correct. Technically, they did have names on a certain level before Adam Rishon, but what Adam Rishon accomplished is he gave them names, and he caused the names to be mamshech, from a state of concealment to a state of revelation. And through this, he was able to elevate the creatures, meaning to say that Adam Rishon comes from Olam HaTikun, the world of Tikkun. And this represents the idea, is connected to the idea of bittul. Now, but the rest of creation, Demech, Samech, and Demech, Samech, and Chai, they all come from the world of Tohu. Now, through calling each of these aspects of creation by their different names, it caused them to draw them down from this world of Tohu to Tikkun and give them a sense of bittul that they need. And an example of this idea of spiritual wish accomplished by Adam Rishon giving the animals names is the case brought down in the Gemara in Chulin of the donkey of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. That he was on this donkey was on such a high level that because it had this effect from Adam Rishon, that it actually knew to not eat untithed produce, and I refused to eat the tithed produce until it was tithed. But this is because this specific donkey was on the level of one of the behemoths of Sheish Mebreshus that Adam Rishon himself personally gave a name. However, today we don't have these lofty animals in the same sense. So the way that we are able to, so to speak, accomplish the same spiritual accomplishments that Adam Rishon did is by blessing them, meaning to say that through the chait, there was a certain descent that occurred in the world that needs to be refined, meaning to say, of Adam and Chava. And through the way we refine and correct this is through mankind today eating kosher food, obviously, that comes from the mineral world, just minerals, plants, and animals. And what we do is we make a bracha on the food before we eat it, bracha rishona and bracha achrona. And through making these brachas, we actually cause this elevation and of the food and have it included in this this level of Adam, which is the level of Tikkun. This is what it means in the pasuk in Yirmiyav, Zeraiti as Beis Yisrael. I will plant. So this is the idea connected to Or Zarua, the light planting is brought down to Tehillim. This is the godly soul coming from the name of Hashem, Ma, within Tikkun, that becomes enclosed in the body and the animal soul to become elevated and to refine the 248 sparks. And through this, one can daven afterwards and say the Krishma by saying the Echad, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then go into the V'ahavta of Krishma, specifically using the energy and the power that the person got from making the bracha and eating and consuming the food that he ate. He is able to take that koyach and do that mitzvah of Krishma. Therefore, one needs to daven every single day. Why do they need daven every day? Because every day, the abilities of the body, the koyches of the guf, become renewed from the chayes of the food, and we need to elevate them every day. Meaning to say that through davening, which is elevating the feminine waters, the mind nukvin, which is malchus, elevating malchus with Mesiras Nefesh, by saying echad of the Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem echad with absolute Mesiras Nefesh, and then we daven with Mesiras Nefesh, which is this sulam, this spiritual ladder. We are able to refine our body in a way, and our soul in a way that we can properly elevate the food and the world's earth around us. Now, with regards to the planting and the sprouting that we were discussing, the Zeraiti is Beis Yisrael, or Zarua, as we spoke, says Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha in Birchas Kainim. So in Birchas Kainim, as we brought down earlier in the Zohar, it says that there is the bracha at the beginning, Yivarechecha, and then Vani Yavarchem is the very end of the bracha. So the bracha Baraish at the beginning of Birchas Kainim is this hamshacha of the koyach of the Isus Tita'ala in order so that way that there can be an Isus Sata with bracha and tzlacha, etc. And the inyan of the second bracha, so that would be the next bracha, Yashem panav elik v'choneka. This represents drawing down the masculine waters, mein duchrin, which is after the elevation of mein nukvin, malchus, and this Isus Sata, as we spoke about earlier, because even though that the elevation of my nukvin is described as being a refinement process, nevertheless, the main shleimus, the complete refining process, only occurs after the hamshacha of the masculine waters, of the maim duchrin, over the maim nukvin, over the feminine waters. Or in other words, and the hamshacha of za into malchus to refine malchus. Now, this inyan of lemaveh echad be'echad, of unity, oneness going into oneness, is that through revealing the oneness of Yehudillah in the oneness, the echad of elevating my nukvin, then we have Likkutei Torah, as being through this, we elevate the my nukvin and have it included in Yehudillah, and then becomes included in the most literal sense. And one can also explain that Echad Ilah becomes elevated through this elevation of my nukvin, which is Echad Tata, meaning that Adam Rishon is basically the combination of both masculine and feminine in one body, as it was written in the Zohar. And therefore, the Jewish people are called Tamasi in Shir Hashirim, that they create a sense of shleimus through this achdus of echad be'echad. And both these explanations are true, meaning explanation of the Yehudillah coming into the Likkutei Torah, then elevating back to being included in Yehudillah, and the second explanation of the masculine and feminine being one. That means echad be'echad. Now, in Avodas Hashem, we can also understand this inyan. How is this connected to Avodas Hashem? In the sense that elevating my nukvin is the idea of davening with Mesiras Nefesh, with a sense of tshuka, a yearning that we should have daven, that we should have Gilui Lakus. But we still don't have Gilui Lakus b'poil mamish. So rather, one must have this deep yearning and desire for this Gilui. However, the hamshachas of mein duchrin is that which is nimshach, that in this level, in a revealed way, meaning to say that through Torah mitzvahs, we're able to draw down the mein duchrin, the masculine waters. And this is the whole inyan of Birkas HaMazon that we say in Parsha Eikiluvei Rachta Es. The fact that it says S corresponds to Malchus, as is written in the Zohar, V'hi b'chinas Malchus shnikra S. Meaning to say that just like it's written in the Pri Chaim, that the 4 brachas of Birchas HaMazon correspond to the 4 moichin, the 4, I guess, chambers of intellect that we have of Nukva, that we have Cahnman Bina, and then Chesed and Gvura. So these would be the Dalad Meichin de Nukva. Meaning to say that we draw down into it the Meichin from or into Baruch. And this is the inyan of Hamshacha after the Hala, of the elevation of my Nukvin. And therefore, biblically, Midoraisa, we only have to say 3 brachas of Birchas HaMazon. Why? Because the main Hamshacha is with regards to 3 moichin, which is Chabad, Chachma bin and Das. Rather, the moyach of Das is divided into 2 moichin, to 2, I guess, intellectual faculties. Those 2 subdivisions of Das are the Hei Chasadim and the Hei Gvures. So they are called the train Itrin. Itr de Chesed, Itr de Gvura. These 2 crowns of Chesed and Gvura. And the main ispashtus of Gvurais is into Nukva of Za. And therefore, Midoraisa, biblically, where we have Za, which is Tarshvich Sav, we only need 3 brachas to cause us some shacha, which is Chachma bin and Das. However, Midrabanan, Torsh Bal Peh, we need Malchus. So therefore, because the Malchus, Torsh Bal Peh is connected to Malchus, and therefore we need a 4th bracha, which is this crown with this revelation of the crown of Gvura into Nukva, into Malchus. And therefore, and behold, that the source of all of the mind duchrin, masculine waters, comes and is drawn down into Za from the light of Abba, from the light of Chachma into Za. Because specifically, B'chachma Isperiru, that's from so essentially we have this Hamshacha from Abba, meaning from Chachma to Za, and then from Za it comes down into Nukva to refine the mind Nukvin, and this is the whole inyan of Hashem panav Eilicha, and Hashem should illuminate for you that this level of Chachma, meaning that this Chachma should be refined. Because Chachmas Adam Tayir Panav. And that's the end of Ois Aleph. Now moving on to Ois Beis, longer Ois. The whole inyan of Yisa Shem Panav is in the Berchas Koyanim, that after the mind Nukvin is refined, the mind Duchrin is also refined, then they get elevated and I guess exalted to this level of the source of both of them, the source of the mind Nukvin and the mind Duchrin, which is higher than both of them. As is written in Mirai Mehemna, that this is the inyan of Yisa'eu el Evrasai in Hazinu, specifically the idea of Yisa'eu, this idea of elevation. And our sages say, explain this inyan, they say that it's written in the Torah, "V'chalta v'savata v'rachta," and specifically, even though in the Torah Shebech it's specifically when you are completely satiated is when you're chayvin. Birchas HaMazon, the Yidden are medactic, or specific on themselves, specifically to define us being satiated as eating a kazais. Now it seems that the reason why we needed to set this definitive measure as to what is the amount necessary to make b'chayv and berachas hamazayin and define this level of savata, specifically to kazayis, is just the whole idea in general in Torah mitzvahs, why everything in all the mitzvahs in Torah have specific exact measurements. This spiritually is called kav hamida, very specific measurements. This actually spiritually comes from this level of chachma stima, this concealed level of chachma within Hashem, that in it we have enclosed this very lofty gevura within atik yomin, which is even beyond chachma, and we have these hey gevuras, which is really the source of this idea of kav hamida. And this is what actually gives limitation for any hamshacha of lights and kelim, to the extent that this chachma confines and constricts something, so that way each mitzvah can have a very specific shear to it. For example, we have the length of tzitzis needs to be specifically 12 gudlin. The tefillin needs to be exactly perfectly square or cubed. And so it's specifically from the spiritual inyan, as we're explaining, this kav hamida, that all this comes out. And the Alter Rebbe explains, or maybe it's the Tzemach Tzedek, that about how it is actually possible that really this idea of gvul and simsum actually is mislabish in chachma specifically, which is usually more is connected to the kava yamin, which is more the opposite of gvur and simsum. So explains this, that it is possible for that to be the case, and that is the case here. Now we can move on to explain the pasuk in Eikev, achalta v'savata v'rachta, the idea of berachas hamazayin, of specifically having the satiation. That even though physically you're not completely satiated, halacha defines you being satiated by eating the shear of a kazais. So when you have even less than the shear, then you don't have the same spiritual effect as when you have the full shear. As he explains, that there's chelkei toiv, that's ganuz, that's concealed, the elements of good that's hidden in the 248 sparks of tohu, that when you eat specifically the shear required for berachas hamazayin, then you can elevate my nukfin lamaila and activate the shefa and the hamshacha of my duchrin. As is written in the Zohar, it says leis birchasa sharia basa rekanya, that there's no bracha, meaning there's no hamshacha in a place that's empty, void of this spark. Now, even though it's having less than a shear is considered relative rekanya, relative void, nevertheless, it's still not rekanya mamish, not an actual void, because there's a little bit of elevation of sparks that still do occur and still exist. And despite this, that it causes a small amount of hamshacha, but it's not enough to cause the actual full-fledged hamshacha and activate the full-fledged hamshacha as it would be if it was a full shear. Now, moving past the parentheses, the brackets, that all this is according to kav hamida. This concept of kav hamida we discussed earlier at length. That from there, this spiritual level of kav hamida, which is malubish chachma stima, that from there it's nimshach, the midah and shear of my nukvin and my duchrin, as we mentioned earlier. However, in order for this hamshacha my duchrin, even when there is a elevation hala of my nukvin, when it's less than kedei sevia, and this with regard when it's less than the share of kedei sevia, therefore we rely on the bracha of birchas kohanim yisa via panav. That it's explained above in the explanation of panav. Panav in birchas kohanim represents chachmei la, chachma v'tzilus. The source of this is in chachma stima. However, yisa via panav is the level that's higher, even higher than chachma stima, meaning to say that in the level of pnimius of arach anpin, which is pnimius of arach anpin is keser within keser shebekkeser, which is higher than chachma stima, which is chachma stima is chachma shebekkeser. And the chachma is this level, has this level of din and kavamida, which is the beginning of atzilus. Now, however, with regards to atzmis or ein sof, Baruch Hu, it's written Magbila Shavas and the Spiel Yerusabishmaim Va'aretz in Tehillim that Hashem is enthroned on high, and he's able to see what's below in Shemayim and Aretz, that Atzilus, that with regards to this pasuk, Atzilus, it's alluding to the fact that Baruchnius, Atzilus, and the world Olam Atzilus and Olam Hasiya is absolutely equal in compared to Hashem's essence. And therefore, from there, it's Nimshach, this hashpala, hamashpili, which is the shefa of Maim Duchrin, which descends and is nimshach and dwells also on halayis Maim Nukvin, the elevation of Maim Nukvin, which is hamuat shebechachos מכדי sevia, which is less than kedei sevia, shiluktu la'achad achad, that each of these sparks are able to be gathered, even though that it's less than the kedei sevia. And this is what it means in the pasuk in birchas kohanim yisa via panav, that we are able to elevate it, we can elevate this level or abba, which is chachmei la, up and up all the way to ein sof baruch Hu. It's not shaykh that in the world from the level of ein sof baruch Hu, it's not shaykh panim v'acharayim at all, meaning face, the idea of previous panim and achar is not shaykh, because it's a level of atzmius that's beyond both. Therefore, from there, yitzava vayas abracha, Hashem will command the bracha v'amshachas ma'duchrin, and cause this amshacha of the masculine waters to come down, in order so that way must be alachochai, that every living thing will receive a certain sense of satisfaction or satiation, which is ratzain ha'elyain, even though that when the hala is less than the shear, according to the Kavamida, we don't have this element of saiva and hamshacha bracha at the same level. This is what it means, ve'echloi asapani, etc. V'hem tiktikua atum ad kazayis vad kibetza. Meaning to say that Knesset Yisrael is this level of Malchus Datzilus, that the end is wedged within the beginning. And therefore, they're able to draw down this level of Keser that's higher than Chachma, as it is known from this Inyan, Arevi Malai Divrei Seifrim Yesrim Yena Shel Torah, that the that the words of Torah scholars is even greater than the wine of Torah. Meaning to say that Hashem was so pleased with the fact that the rabbis went ahead and made this cutoff of this shir of midah, this kav midah, for the shir of kedei, which is more chamer than what most people's kedei is. And nevertheless, they're also given the shir and midah ad kazais v'ad kibetza, because also the mshachal yaina that is higher than histalshlus, and from this kav midah we spoke about, it's nimshach, and comes about through specifically the kav midah, this element of gvul and simsum, but that's sourced and even higher than chachma. Forever it's impossible to receive, except it's only possible to receive through this level of kav and midah, because the kav and the midah creates the kli to receive this bracha and hamshacha of the urs into the kilim. And now there's a very fascinating parentheses, very long, fascinating parentheses at the top of Chav Zayin Amud Daled that I highly recommend and encourage everyone to learn on their own, but due to the limitations of the length of this shir, I'm going to end the shir right here, but I highly recommend you all learn the parentheses inside. And that is the end of Ois Beis, and the end of the shir for Daf Chaf Zayin. I hope you all have a wonderful day.